the coffee that changed everything. The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Corner Cup Cafe, creating a soothing rhythm that matched Sarah Chen's quiet movements as she wiped down tables. The small Portland coffee shop felt especially cozy on this gray Tuesday afternoon, with its warm pendant lights casting gentle circles on the wooden floors and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filling the air. Sarah had been working here for almost 2 years, balancing shifts with her nursing school classes. The job barely covered her rent and groceries, but it was the only work that fit around her demanding study schedule. Every tip mattered, every dollar saved went into the mason jar marked tuition. That sat on her kitchen counter at home today had been particularly slow. Only 3 customers had come in during the lunch rush, and Sarah knew her tip jar would be lighter than usual. The rent was due next week, and she was still short $30. Her textbooks for next semester would have to wait another month, which meant more nights studying in the library and borrowing notes from classmates. The bell above the door chimed softly, and Sarah looked up to see 2 figures stepping in from the storm. A man and a little girl stood near the entrance, both completely soaked from the heavy rain. Water dripped from their clothes onto the welcome mat, creating small puddles that reflected the cafe's warm lighting. The man appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair plastered against his forehead. His simple shirt and jeans clung to him uncomfortably, and his worn sneakers squeaked softly on the floor. But it was the careful way he positioned himself protectively near the little girl that caught Sarah's attention. The child, maybe 5 years old, pressed close to her father's side. Her blonde hair hung in damp strands around her small face, and she clutched a teddy bear that was just as wet as she was. Despite clearly being cold and uncomfortable, she looked around the cafe with the quiet wonder that children bring to new places. Sarah recognized something in their hesitation. The careful way they stood near the door, the man's eyes scanning the menu prices, the child's brave attempt not to shiver. She had seen that uncertainty before, had felt it herself during her own lean months when every purchase required careful consideration. The man approached the counter slowly, pulling out a thin wallet and counting the bills inside with movements that spoke of necessity rather than choice. He looked up at the menu board, then down at his daughter, who was trying hard not to show how cold she was. "Excuse me," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of embarrassment. "Do you have any day-old pastries? Something that might be marked down?" Sarah's heart tightened as she watched the little girl stare longingly at the display case, filled with muffins and cookies. The child's stomach made a soft rumbling sound, and she wrapped her arms tighter around her teddy bear. "Daddy, I'm not really hungry," the little girl whispered, though her eyes remained fixed on the pastries. "We can wait until we get home." The man knelt down to his daughter's level. "It's okay, Emma. Let me see what we can manage." He stood and turned back to Sarah, his cheeks flushed with the kind of shame that comes from having to ask for help. "Maybe we should just go. I'm sorry to bother you." "Wait," Sarah said quickly, her heart making the decision before her practical mind could object. "It's terrible weather out there. You both look freezing. How about some hot coffee and hot chocolate to warm you up?" The man's face showed surprise, mixed with wariness. "That's very kind, but I'm not sure we can afford much right now." Sarah was already reaching for 2 large mugs. "Don't worry about it. I was about to make fresh coffee anyway." She smiled warmly at Emma. "And I think we have some cookies that aren't quite perfect enough to sell. They taste just fine, but they're not pretty enough for the display case." This was a gentle lie. The cookies were beautiful, but Sarah understood that sometimes kindness needed to be offered in a way that preserved dignity. The man's eyes filled with something that might have been tears. "You really don't have to do this, I know," Sarah replied softly, "but I want to." As she prepared the drinks, Sarah found herself humming quietly, something she hadn't done in weeks. There was something about helping others that made her own worries feel smaller and more manageable. She selected the largest chocolate chip cookie from the case and warmed it gently. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Sarah asked as she placed the steaming hot chocolate in front of Emma, topped with a generous swirl of whipped cream. "Emma," the little girl replied shyly, her eyes growing wide as she looked at the beautiful drink. "And this is my daddy, Marcus. It's wonderful to meet you both. I'm Sarah." She handed Marcus his coffee, noticing how his hands wrapped around the warm mug, as if drawing strength from it. "Are you from around here?" Marcus hesitated. "We're just taking some time to figure things out. Emma and I are spending time in different neighborhoods, trying to find our way." Sarah nodded with understanding. She had been in that uncertain place herself, between one chapter of life and the next, not quite sure where the path was leading. Emma took a careful sip of her hot chocolate and smiled. The first genuine smile Sarah had seen from either of them. "This is the most amazing hot chocolate ever," she announced, her voice bright with happiness. A small mustache of whipped cream appeared on her upper lip, making Sarah smile warmly. For the next hour, Marcus and Emma sat at a corner table watching the rain continue to fall. Sarah refilled Marcus's coffee and brought Emma another cookie, never mentioning payment. She couldn't really afford to give away $15 worth of food and drinks, but something about their quiet gratitude made it feel like the right thing to do. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah noticed Marcus watching her work with thoughtful attention. When she cleaned a nearby table, he spoke quietly. "Thank you for this kindness. Emma and I have been going through some difficult changes lately. It's been a while since we've met someone who just cares about others without expecting anything in return. Everyone deserves compassion," Sarah said simply, "especially when times are hard." Marcus studied her face. "You mentioned figuring things out. What are your hopes?" "I'm studying to be a pediatric nurse," Sarah said, pride entering her voice despite her exhaustion. "I want to help children when they're scared or hurting." Something shifted in Marcus's an expression, a look of recognition or perhaps respect. "That's beautiful work. The world needs more people like you caring for others." When the rain finally lessened, Marcus and Emma prepared to leave. Emma hugged her teddy bear and looked up at Sarah with bright, grateful eyes. "Thank you for the best hot chocolate and cookies ever," she said sweetly. "You're really nice." "You're very welcome, Emma. Take care of yourself and your daddy." Marcus shook Sarah's hand, his grip warm and sincere. "Thank you, Sarah. You've reminded us that there's still goodness in the world when we need it most." After they left, Sarah finished her shift with unexpected lightness in her heart. Despite having given away money she couldn't spare, 4 days later, Sarah arrived at work to find her manager waiting with a mysterious envelope. "Someone left this for you," he said. A man named Marcus Harrison. Inside the envelope, Sarah found a check that made her hands tremble enough to cover her entire remaining tuition and living expenses for nursing school. There was also a handwritten note. "Dear Sarah, 4 days ago, you showed Emma and me extraordinary kindness when we needed it most. You didn't know that I'm Marcus Harrison, CEO of Harrison Tech. But even if you had known, I believe your response would have been the same. You saw two people who needed warmth and care, and you provided both without hesitation. Emma and I have been staying in different neighborhoods while I work through a difficult divorce. Your cafe was meant to be just another stop, but your compassion reminded us both that there are still genuinely good people in this world. This isn't charity. It's an investment in someone whose heart is already dedicated to helping others. Please accept this as my way of ensuring that your dream of caring for children becomes reality. With profound gratitude, Marcus Harrison. P.S. Emma asks me to tell you every day about the cookie lady who was so nice to us." Sarah sat down, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the gift. Through her tears she realized she had learned something profound about the nature of kindness, that when we give from the heart without expecting anything in return, we often receive far more than we could have imagined. Months later, as Sarah walked through the children's wing of the hospital where she now worked as a nurse, she often thought about that rainy Tuesday afternoon. She had offered simple human warmth to two strangers, never knowing that her act of compassion would transform her entire future. Every time she comforted a frightened child or helped a worried parent, she remembered Emma's sweet smile and Marcus's grateful handshake. She had learned that true kindness creates ripples that extend far beyond the moment, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. The greatest gift wasn't the money that made her dreams possible, it was the reminder that in a world that often feels disconnected, small acts of human compassion still have the power to change everything.